Hey everyone, welcome back to TV Guys. And if you fall asleep during this episode, we're moving you to Tulsa. I'm Matt,
I'm Brian.
and we avoided the obvious joke. Yeah, Brian? Be honest. How much would you have put in the bet to say I would do a? Could we be any more of a whatever as the one-liner?
I figured you'd do something like that. So yeah, you didn't do the obvious joke, but also the whole Tulsa thing is in a different light because you're realizing that he only went to Tulsa so that Matthew Perry could get a handle on his drug addiction.
No. So thanks for ruining that. I don't know if many other people know that either. So I mean, way to shatter that illusion.
Yeah.
But speaking of the low-hanging fruit, I will say my favorite version of that joke, because that's the one you mock when you're gonna mock Matthew Perry on Friends, which people aren't gonna do that for a little bit now. But when you're making fun of that, The Simpsons did a really good version of it in a Treehouse of Horror episode where the Simpsons move into a smart house. And the smart house has a number of settings for the robot voice, and they end up settling on Pierce Brosnan, actually voiced by Pierce Brosnan in that episode. But one of the settings is Matthew Perry, and they switch to it for a second and goes, "Can I be any more of a house?" And then they just keep moving down the list.
I think it's one of those things where I don't know how often he actually did that on Friends. It just kind of became what he was known for.
Yeah, it's more about the cadence that it's said with. Because he has that specific way of talking where emphasizing the weird word to really drive home the sarcasm of the sentence.
Because when I think of that, the one that comes to mind is actually Joey mocking Chandler when he's like, "Could I be wearing any more clothes?" That's the person that comes to mind. I have to remember, wait, no, that's Joey.
Monica says one too, whereas "Could I be any?" I can't remember what her one is, but she does one in another episode as well.
Yeah.
But today we are talking about the best Chandler moments, obviously because of the recent news of Matthew Perry's death. And so I know by the time that this episode comes out, it'll have been pretty old, especially in internet terms, because even 1 week after that had happened, it already is sadly enough, this is how we are. We move on. We continue with our own life, and we're yeah, that's sad, but we get to the other side of it. So this is our own little version, a month late probably by the time this is out.
We're already a week and a half late recording this.
Yeah. So a month after this has happened, but we're still going to give a little bit of a memorial on our side of it, just to say, hey, this was a great character and we really want to applaud. I know that there's been a lot of that because Matthew Perry made us laugh. And there's
always my favorite. Yeah.
There's a little bit of the sadness of it too when you hear some of his commentary and interviews where he talked about having to chase the laugh and how he needed to get the laugh, and it was just such an obsession that it led and fueled his drug problem. And that really hurts me because I feel like he's just so naturally funny that even when a joke doesn't quite land, he still does it in a really good way. And to know that caused him the pain it did to chase after that makes me sad. I'm I want to be able to enjoy these episodes, and I haven't gone back and rewatched because I don't know how it would in light of that and what has happened to him. I don't know how these episodes would hit this time, but I always, you said it, he's your favorite. He's one of my favorites. He does such a good job. So we wanted to commemorate some of our best Chandler moments.
Yeah. So I remember the night that it happened, I was driving to my girlfriend's house and my car has the feature where it reads your text messages to you. And I got a text from actually our guest from last week, Alex, said, "Hey, did Matthew Perry die?" I'm like, "No." So as soon as I parked, I pulled out my phone and Googled and found out, yeah, that's true. And then the next thing I did was I screenshotted it and sent it to Matt, and Matt's like, "Yeah, Angie just told me."
Yeah, she literally told me maybe 20 seconds before you sent that to me. So she still broke the news first, but only barely.
So Alex and Angie broke the news to us.
The A's. And speaking of which, we did also reach out to a number of guests because we've done a couple episodes on Friends before. Yep. We early on, we talked about our favorite cameos. Then we did an episode where we ranked every single character on Friends. And so we've had a couple different shows and we've had some guests on there. So we reached out to a few of our guests.
And I believe Trisha caved and let me put Chandler as number one because she was going to put Phoebe as number one and she had a veto. But if I remember correctly, she let me put Chandler as number one.
Oh, that's so nice of her.
Or he
That's
didn't give it to
that
Phoebe.
just shows her how non-competitively she takes those. Like, it's really funny to have one of those with Trisha versus one of those with Paul, because Trisha's
Yeah.
like, "I'm just having fun through this whole episode," and Paul's like, "I will win, and the right person will be at number one. So help me!" Like, he treats it like a challenge, which is great. It's good to have both of those type of guests.
Well, I do think it was fitting that the top three was Chandler, Phoebe, and Joey. Like that's the way it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
Mhm.
Ross isn't making the top three. Wasn't Mike like number four?
Yeah, Mike was above. Mike was within the top six. Like it wasn't just the friends or the top six, which is what I wanted to do. I tried to put Monica pretty low, but then you guys vetoed me, and we had to put her higher.
Yeah, it's hard with one of the top six to not have or one of the six regulars to not have them at least in the top 10, maybe, just because we
Mhm.
get so much of them. 10 seasons.
Yeah, and like obviously and even when we talked about, oh, this was before we were recording, but the seasons when Chandler went to the episodes where he went to Tulsa was so that Matthew Perry could not be around for a little bit to go into rehab for his drug addiction. But even then, they would insert scenes of him in Oklahoma so that there's still not a single episode where one of the six does not appear. They're all six in every episode.
Yeah, it's funny when it's funny the things that TV shows do to cover real life things. Like the most common thing we
Yeah.
hear about is pregnancies of
Mhm.
like, oh, they stage it certain ways so you don't see the belly. And then all of a sudden Lily is gone on the show because Barney said a bad joke to her for 4
Yeah.
episodes or whatever it is. And it's like, well, that's maternity leave. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Or Phoebe was pregnant in real life. Lisa Kudrow was pregnant. They wrote her into being pregnant in the show with her brother's triplets, but she wasn't in real life
Jenna
pregnant with
Fisher too in
triplets.
The Office.
Yep. But she was. But the thing is that Lisa Kudrow wasn't. For one thing, she wasn't pregnant with triplets, and Phoebe had she had the baby before Phoebe did. So Phoebe had to still had to wear a fake baby belt, bump after she had the baby.
Was
Weird timeline things.
Was it pregnancy that was the reason for Zoe Deschanel going on jury duty in the final New Girl season?
I believe so. Yes.
That's what
Yeah.
I thought so too. Anyway, we're not talking about those shows.
We get on
Well,
tangents so easily.
it is. We haven't even gotten to one Chandler moment, and we're like, what, 8 minutes in? So,
But you know what? If Chandler had a podcast, which out of the six, he'd be the one to have a podcast. This is how it would be.
Ross would, and it would be an extremely boring podcast.
Ross would be like talking dinosaurs.
Let me tell you about new sedimentary developments in the. No, I don't want to hear this.
And then one episode would begin. Someone would say he's boring, and then he would go way over the top and be like, "I'm Ross the Dino," and I'm writing an episode of Friends right now.
I mean, we had something similar to that where he just happened. I don't remember the reasoning, but he happened into an English accent as a professor.
Oh
and
yeah,
and the class responded so well to it. He's just like, well, I'm just gonna keep that. So it is 100% within character for Ross to try to appeal to his demographic in a really stupid way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's talk. So again, we reached out to some of our guests, and so talking about Trisha earlier, we asked her what was one of her favorite Chandler moments, and she actually said she gave a couple ones. One of them was she was like, I actually really like to watch the bloopers because it's really funny. Again, this goes back to how funny Matthew Perry is that he was the hit on set. You could tell that he was the guy that would always keep up that energy for everyone else on the set. They all were good actors. They all had their good comedic timing, but I think having Matthew Perry there made the show fun. And when you make something fun, everyone buys into it. That's why the Ocean's 11 movies are so great. You can tell they're all having fun. You can tell the cast of Friends is having fun. And so that was a big thing because she said he was just so funny when he was messing with the different actors and making fun of them too.
Yeah.
Which is a Chandler thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's one that actually happened in show that I agree with. I think this was on my list. Of course, the whole arc of Monica and Chandler dating secretly had so many great moments. A lot of Chandler's best stuff in there. But the one she pulled out of it was when he accidentally kisses Monica on the way out the
Oh, yeah.
door in front of Rachel and Phoebe, and so then he goes to cover his bases. He has to kiss all of them as well, and like played it
Well,
off like after Europe, this was a Europe thing.
like he kisses Rachel, and then he has to like maneuver around Phoebe's giant triplet belly to kiss her.
Phoebes, always a pleasure.
And then Joey's at the door, and Joey's like, get away from me.
And it's
No,
funny that they let it happen like a couple times, but they're
Mhm.
like, this can't keep. And then, of course, they have the come to Jesus like, no, this has to stop.
Yes.
And Monica's, frankly, it's a little gross.
And then the kind of a similar one is like when Chandler's boss kept slapping him on the butt, and then he had to have the same conversation with his boss.
Which I have to too. Although I work remotely, so it's a lot more effort for my boss to come down here and slap my butt than drive back to Wilmer. Man, they're committed. 4 hours here, 4 hours back, just for a good old butt slap. At that point, I can't report them. You just got to admire the effort.
You're like, you know what? You win this one.
I'm even giving you a slow clap. Just real good stuff.
Yeah. An underrated pairing, because when you think of Chandler, you think of either Chandler Monica or Chandler and Joey. And of course, those are great pairings, but I love that when you get little smatterings of Chandler and Rachel as friends. I don't know why. It just works so well. And out of the three guys, Chandler's the only one they never, except for like in an alternate flashback, they hint at like, oh, Chandler had a crush on Rachel once. Other than that, it was never ever, you never wonder, oh, are Chandler and Rachel going to be a thing?
Yeah.
And took that pressure off. Like I'm thinking when they are eating the cheesecake off the floor in the hallway, and Joey comes up, and of course Joey's the one who not only doesn't question it, but already has a fork in his pocket ready to like, all right, here we go.
And for me, like I was looking online too to be like, just to make sure we don't miss some. I want to see what do other people out there say are their favorite Chandler moments as well. Yeah. And so this one was brought up, but I'm not going to put it on my list just because for me, sure, that's a fun thing with him and Rachel, but to me that ends up being a Joey moment just because that is such a great response. It's almost like someone in the writer's room started with that moment because it builds so perfectly to that let's work backwards from that.
Yeah, that moment might be a Joey moment, but the whole storyline was Chandler and Rachel being obsessed with the cheesecake, and it was like a thing that they were doing together.
Yes.
And like you don't get a lot of Rachel and Chandler, but there's one episode early on where Chandler is drunk and he's like, and then Rachel's like, you mean Beefsteak Charlie's? He's like, yes. He goes, you and I, we've always been like this. And then just a little...
Yeah, and then the fingers back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, what was his thing like? Why was he so uppity in that moment, like on the show? Because there was a reason he was like high energy for something.
He was drunk.
I thought that's what it was.
But I don't remember why he was drunk.
Yeah. Probably from the alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
No, but speaking of Chandler and Rachel, for me, like, I think of whenever I hear Chandler and Rachel, I'll think of the many times that they did like sides, like there's always a number of times where it's Chandler and some other guys versus Rachel and some other girls, even though they're not like the figureheads of it. And so like, we'll get to the one big one that we already talked about like a month ago of the great episode of Chandler and Monica versus Phoebe and Rachel and Joey caught in the crossfire.
Yeah.
But the side thing I love was when they're betting for the apartment in the game show that Ross is hosting. I love that whole episode.
Yeah.
But I end up quoting just a very small thing at the end. It's either at the end of that episode or it's like at the beginning of the next when they're moving in. But Rachel and Monica are upset because they lost, and so they're fighting back and forth. And Chandler, I love this line. I quote it all the time. He's like, "Will you guys stop fighting? You're ruining moving day for us." Yeah. I love that line so much. And I will constantly say, you're ruining something, I'll do that all the time because it's just such a funny diffuser of a fight. And it's like, that's very much Chandler personality.
And then later on, so, for a couple episodes, they switched apartments, and then the guys go to a hockey game or a basketball game. They come back and the girls had switched the apartments back. This is a great Chandler moment when the guys walk into what used to be their apartment and they realize that all their stuff is there. And
Mhm.
Joey doesn't realize what's happening. Joey just goes on autopilot and sits in his chair. But Chandler does this weird thing where he like hunches down and like looks around like what's happening? Like, and it's just a weird physical thing. Like you wouldn't put in the script. Chandler hunches down awkwardly, but it's just in the moment that really worked physically for Chandler in that moment.
Yeah, I love the instincts that some of these characters will have. Like I've said it before about one of these times where David Schwimmer, again, David Schwimmer gets the least in terms of script for what to do with Ross, but he makes the most out of everything that he's given because
Yeah.
he doesn't have a lot to begin with. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, when he's so excited about this phone call with Emily, when she's like agreeing to see him again, and he's just on
Oh
the
yeah.
phone and he absentmindedly picks up a lamp and hands it to Chandler. And so then Matthew Perry rolls with it of just like why'd you hand me a lamp? and it works for both of those
Mhm.
personalities for that moment of that's how it would go. And it's such a natural, stupid joke that works really well because of the actors.
Well, and similarly, there's a Chandler scene where he's trying to say, "Oh, Donald Trump wants his blue blazer back," but he said "blue blazer black," and I believe that was a mistake in the moment that they went with, and all the guys are everyone's making fun of him. Like, why would we want a blue blazer black? Like to think that whole thing was just made up on the spot because Matthew Perry made the mistake, which is just awesome to think about.
Yes. I was going to jump into another relationship because this will tie into what my wife Angie, who asked, we asked, of course, guess who asked her? Probably the guy married to her. So I asked Angie what's one of her favorite Chandler moments, and
Mm-hmm.
she's like, it's not a moment, but just with Joey, she loves the relationship with Joey because
Mm-hmm.
it reveals this other side of Chandler too. Obviously, you get the there has to be, if you have a sarcastic guy and a dumb guy together, the sarcastic guy has to poke fun at the dumb guy. That's
Yes.
just what you do. But there's also a lot of these scenes where we see how much Chandler cares for Joey and how
Oh yeah.
Joey wouldn't have the success that he has in life without Chandler, and how much Chandler does to help him pursue his acting career, even when he has several reasons to not support Joey and to be like,
Yeah.
maybe Joey, you should go somewhere else and do something different.
Well, and be fair, Joey would probably be homeless without Chandler because
Yep.
how much rent did he pay when Joey was not paying rent?
And so I brought up to her, I'm like, you said there's not one moment, but for me, the moment that really exemplifies that best probably is him making up a card game just
Oh
so
yeah.
that he could get money to Joey. I'm like, oh, you won. And then Joey goes and he plays the same game,
With
somehow
Ross.
remembering the rules with Ross, and he beats him. And so then Chandler has to outwit Ross to get Joey his money back.
Yeah. Well, I remember also when, along those lines, Joey and Chandler are going over bills, and he's like, "Here's the phone bill," and Joey's, "Oh my god, that's our phone number."
I thought you were gonna say the joke that it ends on, where like
Yeah.
shows the electric bill, and he immediately jumps up and turns off the lights.
And then Chandler's like, "So we'll finish this later then?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Who else did you talk with some of our other guests?
Yeah. So here's the response that I got. So I messaged both of our guests, Alex and Mike. Alex said earlier, I said, "What was your some favorite Chandler moments?" He said, "Oh my gosh, so many," and that's all he said.
That was
So
Alex.
thanks, Alex. Yeah.
What a pro! We gotta make sure to tag him in this episode.
And then Mike texted me actually just while we're recording this, and he said, "Any Janice moment," which I was going to bring up Janice. I think Janice is such a fun character, especially when she played along with Chandler. So they say that they didn't know early on that Monica and Chandler were going to be like the couple, and they kind of decided, even when they got together, they didn't know they were going to stay together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if Monica and Chandler hadn't happened, I think that Chandler would have ended up with Janice. I think they would have brought her back because they did. She was in one of the 4 characters outside the 6 who were in every season, at least once. And there's really nothing wrong with Janice. She's other than she's just has an annoying laugh and can be a little bit of annoying. But she was a good girlfriend. She was caring, and like they worked together. Like in season 3 when they were more so together,
Mm-hmm.
they had an interesting dynamic. And obviously, you don't want to undo Chandler and Monica, but if it weren't for Chandler and Monica, I wouldn't have hated Chandler ending up with Janice.
See, here's what I see Janice as, because this show, the very beginning of it, the writing was capturing that time of young adulthood before you have all these big responsibilities, when you're just kind of there, the world's open for you, there you get
Mm-hmm.
to pave your own way. And a lot of times the friend group that you have is so instrumental in the life that you choose to lead as an adult. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where it starts off, but then you see like them pull some things that are very relatable to people. And so a lot of people who have had bouts of insecurity end up saying yes to someone dating wise, or just flirt with an idea of someone who is, kind of below them, kind of below where they'd want to be dating. And so Janice ends up being that, of like, you look back and like, oh, I was at a bad spot in life when I thought, yeah, maybe this person would be a good person to date. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was a really unique dynamic. And so what they had to do with that is to really blow up the annoying side of it, because you're right that she probably doesn't have nearly as many defects as the show acts like she does. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it definitely takes a very specific breed, because she's probably clingy. She's very talkative. She
Yeah.
has a voice that's grating. And so, you can see why people would be like, I don't want to be with her. And so they
Oh, yeah.
play that really well. And Chandler is the perfect foil for a character like that. You would probably feel bad if it was like Ross or Joey, but because it's Chandler and he's so awkward about it too, it makes it funny instead of mean.
Yeah. Well, and let me just say, I would love it if my girlfriend bought me Rocky and Bullwinkle socks.
It's not like she's Satan.
I know.
She's just annoying.
No, she is. And I mean, and once they decided that, no, this isn't going to be the couple, then whenever she came back, it was more, like, more and more annoying, which kind of leads me to another great Chandler thing is getting rid of Janice by literally buying a $2,000 plane ticket to Yemen.
I thought you were going to say by the final time of getting rid of Janice, which is also a good Chandler moment of like, oh, maybe, we should try and pursue this, when they're looking at the houses and
Oh
she's going to
yeah,
move in next door. But
but
no, let's go back to Yemen real quick.
yeah, that was such a funny storyline, and like, and him telling them, uh, "I'm moving to Yemen," and everyone gets that. Okay, he's just getting rid of Janice, except for Joey. He's like, "Well, thanks for telling me."
I saw that like in list of one of those lists was like, these are some great Chandler moments. I'm like, I vaguely remember it. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what
Yeah.
was going on?
Well, I actually, even before Matthew Perry passed away, I've been rewatching Friends little by little with an older Friends podcast, and we're towards the end of season 4. So the first 4 seasons are really fresh in my mind because I just watched them.
Mm-hmm.
But he ends up meeting up with Janice. Another Chandler and Rachel moment. Chandler and Rachel are getting their nails done. Janice walks in, and they like hook up, and Janice thinks they're together, and Chandler's like, "Oh no, I need to get rid of her again." And he, in order to get away from breaking her heart again, he's like, "My company is transferring me overseas to Yemen," and he's like, "And I have to leave tomorrow." So then of course, this is a pre 9/11 world where she can follow him all the way to the gate. And she's like, "I'm going to see you off to the gate. I want to see you get off the plane. I'm going to be with you for every moment until you leave." And then he's like, "Well, I guess I'm going to Yemen then." He buys a ticket, and as he's getting on the plane, there's like this older woman. He's like, "When we get to Yemen, can I stay with you?"
That's right. I remember that now.
And
Yeah.
then it comes late, like, and then even in the next season, the next time we see Janice, when she has that weird episode where she like dates Ross for an episode, and she's like, "I know what you're thinking, but Chandler's in Yemen."
See, I remembered the one in the later seasons. I remember the later seasons a lot more than the early seasons. But when they're Monica and Chandler are looking for houses, and they find the perfect
Yeah.
house, and then realize that Janice and her husband are looking at a house next door and that they would be neighbors, and like, oh, that does it. We have to buy this house now. I wasn't sure about it, but if you're buying
Yeah.
this one, we need to buy that one so it can be neighbors. And he's like, we can't have that. So the plot is to try and seduce Janice, so to speak, of
Yeah.
making her think that there's still feelings because she does love her husband. And so to like kind of dupe her that no, this wouldn't work because Chandler's still in love with Janice. And so then Janice is like, oh, I can't, like we can't do this. We can't make this work. But then she's like, but one little last moment of weakness, and she kisses him, and it's like,
Yeah.
like he's squirming while she's just like, this is it. This is the final kiss.
Yeah.
That's a good moment.
Yeah. It's fun. Janice is one of the people who they also brought back for the Friends reunion they had on HBO Max.
Yes, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Here's changing gears a little bit, because if I'm thinking about my favorite Chandler moments, I had the one funny one with like the moving you're ruining moving day for us. That whole episode is great. What was never mind I forget. All right, but the serious one, the one that I really love for the character moment is I think that they nailed the Monica Chandler proposal. Like there's some really good Chandler Monica moments. Like, and we talked about like how he bails out Joey and helps him fiscally, and then like so then there's the one time when Monica realizes they can't afford their dream wedding, and Chandler's like, actually, I've saved a bunch of money. I am really good with finances, and showing that, like, of course he would be. Of course he'd be great with finances, and that's not something that's rubbed in our face a lot, but it is something that pops up a couple different times because that's who he is, and it makes him feel like more of a fleshed out character. But I really just the best Monica Chandler moment. I just love that proposal. I think it's so well done to have her be the one that is sticking her neck out after choosing him over Richard and saying, yes, I for sure want to settle that. I want to do this. I want to be a part of it, knowing that also he was going to propose as well. And so that this was like, it's not that Chandler's afraid of commitment anymore. So she can be the one to take that first step because that's who Monica is. And so she does take that first step, but she can't finish it. And Chandler meets her halfway, and it's a mutual proposal that is just so well done. It is well written. It's very, very good television. And Chandler and Monica play it perfectly.
Yep. And then at the end, it breaks the tension when Joey's like, can we come in yet? We're dying out here.
Yeah. They let them have the moment. Then, of course, like, hey, it's still a sitcom. So,
yeah. But so leading up to that, you talked about Richard. Like, Chandler was trying to act like he didn't want to get married to throw her off so she'd be surprised. And then that's when she, like, ran into Richard or something. And then Richard was telling her, I want to get married. And then Chandler was telling Richard, like, I was just pretending that I didn't want to get married. And Richard says, well, your plan worked very well. I love this line. Richard's like, or Chandler's like, well, it did until you came along, you big tree.
This is another thing that Angie pointed out that's great about Friends is they do a really good job of closing the chapter on other love interests to show that they are for sure choosing this other person. You know, they did that with Richard. They also do it with David and Phoebe to make sure she's choosing Mike. So they give her that last moment, like, yeah, you could still have this if you wanted, but no, she has the options, but she is 100% choosing Mike. And so it's the same with Phoebe and Monica. They are actually choosing each other, and not just, we had a night of passion in London and then we didn't find our way out of it and we just happened into marriage. It's actively choosing love. And I think that is a very key part of the romantic journeys of those characters.
Yeah. And
what's your favorite serious Chandler moment?
Well, here's what I think. It's a perfect blend of serious and funny. And I don't know, this might be another instance of, maybe was this another instance of Matthew Perry needs to not be there, which was Chandler in a Box?
I'm not sure about that, because I thought of that as well, especially when we're talking about like how he is for Joey and what he's willing to do in that friendship. And that's a good example.
Because the comedy is like, oh, Chandler's in a box and they make his jokes and stuff like that. But for most of that episode, I mean, until the end when he gets out, he probably wasn't actually there. So I'm thinking maybe he wasn't actually there for filming most of that episode. But because most of that would have been voiceover.
Yeah.
And like, but it also is a serious thing. Like he went in there because he was literally, especially at the end, choosing Joey over Kathy. And it wasn't until the end when Joey said, like, we're going to be fine. You can go after her. And of course, then she cheats on him a couple episodes later. But until then, it was a sweet moment. And that's, I mean, it is like the perfect blend of funny and serious for Chandler, I think, for me.
Yeah. Yes. I brought up one moment too that we talked about recently, so I didn't feel like we needed to elaborate a lot on it. But I mean, my favorite episode of this show we talked about a month ago or 2 months. I mean, it's probably 2 months now. But the one where everyone finds out between Phoebe and Chandler, and they're both playing the game of sex chicken, so to speak.
Yeah.
And like everything about that is so great. It's definitely like Lisa Kudrow's like shining moment in the show. She has a lot of really good stuff, but this is her at her best, followed by Chandler at his best. And what's unique about Chandler in this position is he's actually a little bit more of the straight man to Lisa Kudrow. He doesn't get straight man a whole lot, but I feel like that episode he's at the whims of Monica's I have to win obsession and trying to beat like he has no agency in this. He doesn't have control. I'm just trying to win so I can make my woman happy. And so he's not cracking jokes. He's not being like silly. He's giving awkward. And this was before cringe humor was what it was today. So in the 90s of having cringe humor at the stage it was, he does a wonderful job. And again, that's why that episode is my favorite. It's so well done.
Yeah, that is a good moment. And yeah, Chandler can do serious. He doesn't do straight man very often because usually when someone else is being the wacky one, his version of being the straight man is making sarcastic comments about whatever's going on.
Yes. What is it? I don't do advice well. Can I interest you in a sarcastic comment?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, here's another line that I really like. I use this a lot, but I believe it's with Mike when Mike's trying to get relationship advice, and he's like, "I give bad advice. I'm trying to stay out of it." And so, like, Mike keeps pushing the issue. He's like, "Mike, I am pretending to read here."
Yeah.
What are some other small lines? Because like I feel like that's where he shines too. He like just these small moments. Like everyone knows the Ross pivot, but it's not as much without Matthew Perry. Shut up!
Yeah. Another one was it's a Halloween episode where Chandler's dressed as the Pink Bunny. I think Ross is dating Mona at the time, and he comes in and he's like, "Oh, Joey will be glad you're dressed as a slutty nurse." And he's like, "Oh," she's like, "Oh, I'm not a slutty nurse. I'm just a nurse." And he points to his costume. It's like, you think this might embarrass me, but I'm maxed out.
Or speaking of the when he's talking with Anna Faris about like he's the only one in the room with her, and so he's talking about to fill the time. The difference between like getting kicked in the balls for a guy and giving birth for a woman, and it's just like what was the line where he's like saying it, and it's just like it's just no one can know what the pain would be like, kind of like this moment right now.
Yeah, which okay, I'm not saying either way, one way or the other, but the argument I've heard,
what
is that a lot of women voluntarily have a second kid, but no man voluntarily says, "I'm going to get kicked in the nuts again."
Okay. Really stupid rabbit trail. I did as a kid because I thought, hey, if I can develop like a tolerance for pain on that, then people can't hurt me. So I thought somehow the more frequently that could happen to me, I would end up somehow developing muscles. I don't know. I was a kid. I don't know what my logic was. I just thought somehow I would be inoculated and be like, yeah, I could get kicked in the junk and be fine. It never happened, and I just got kicked in the junk unnecessarily a lot for no reason.
That is word for word an anecdote that could have been a Chandler line in Friends.
I think that could also be a Nick Miller line.
Yes, absolutely. That shows a lot about you as a person, Matt.
Thank you.
I didn't say it was good.
All right, well, let's go to other great moments. Oh, here's a fun one. I've always loved sitcoms where they do a good setup of like everyone has a secret, and then at a certain point, all these secrets come out. And so it's like the I Love Jacques Cousteau episode when everyone is shouting all this new information for Ross
Judy
and
Geller.
for Judy and what's his name? Jack. Judy and Jack. And so they're all like freaking out of like Ross smoked in college and Chandler and Monica are living together and all that stuff. And they've been against Chandler for so long because they just thought that Chandler was the reason that Ross was smoking pot sometime in college. And so after all of that came out and Judy like addresses every single problem as it comes, Judy and Jack turn to Chandler like, thank you, Chandler. You've been the one that's always there. And Chandler's face just changes from you don't hate me to now I'm your favorite. And so then when they turn back to Ross and Rachel, or not right, Ross and Monica, like, I don't know what we're going to do with you two. And Chandler, I'll talk with them.
Yeah.
That whole episode
quite
was
the
really
turn.
good. I love it.
That is one I don't know if I could pick my favorite Thanksgiving episode of Friends. Tune in next week, but that would definitely be in the running.
Yeah. That is a Thanksgiving episode. Spoiler alert, that's probably my favorite. It's a great episode.
It is. It's it might be mine. I don't know for sure if it is. But another episode of Friends it's one of the first times they decided to pick everybody will be in one location except for we're going to take one character and put them apart, which was the Blackout episode where Chandler was stuck in the ATM with the supermodel Jill something.
That's her name, Jill something.
Yep, Jill something. Who I'm assuming, was she an actual famous supermodel at the time?
Yes, she was. I don't know her, but I just remember like knowing that was some big deal.
Yeah, and it worked because with Chandler's sarcasm, you hear the voiceover of what's going on in Chandler's head, and even to himself, he can't stop but being sarcastic and snarky. Like, if she offers you gum, you take it. If she offers you a mangled animal carcass, you take it.
Yes, that was a very dynamic episode of Friends for Chandler because it's something new to take this character and put him somewhere else with a guest star and to really be pulled away from everyone else. And it was done well. And I know a lot of people who they love that episode. It's still early Friends, and like I said, I'm a late Friends guy. Sorry.
I normally am too, but it's just the early seasons are fresh in my mind because in this rewatch, I'm on season 4. I'm gonna get through them. My go-to was always season 7. If I was gonna just pick up and watch for fun, I would pick up season 7.
Yeah. By the way, I looked up because I felt so bad that I messed up the line where he's talking with Anna Faris and how he's digging himself a hole. His line, oh no, my parachute is a knapsack.
Oh yeah. One of the few times early on, they without knowing it, because they didn't have a plan back then, they hinted at Chandler and Monica, like in season 1.
But I looked up the quote, and so he's talking with her about no one will ever know because no one can experience both. One of life's great unanswerable questions. I mean, who knows? Maybe there's something even more painful than those things, like this.
Yes, that's yeah. Anna Faris was a great guest star in those seasons.
Yeah, I like Anna Faris. She's underrated.
Me too. And another one with Chandler I just had. Oh, it's also with Anna Faris. This is one of probably the most inappropriate the show. One of the most inappropriate the show's ever gone. When she's trying to figure out which of these two guys got her pregnant, and then Chandler says to Monica, "Oh, or Monica's sister, turns out the thing she did with the other guy you can't get pregnant from." And Chandler's like, "Oh, is it the thing we hardly ever do, or the thing we never do?"
Also, just because I love this movie too, I really enjoy Chandler's fascination with Miss Congeniality.
Oh yeah.
I know that was only for one episode, but it's a running gag for that episode. If you know it through a wall, you know it too well.
Or just now, I also remember Chandler with the Pac-Man machine when he got so obsessed with it that his hand formed a claw.
Yep.
I remember Monica coming home, guess what I did today? Well, it clearly wasn't showering or shaving.
Oh, yeah. The time when he was unemployed for like 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm. Or like when Monica and him are still trying to hide their relationship, and Monica's hiding underneath the water in the tub, and Chandler walks in and is like, I've had a very long, hard day.
Yes. That's good. Oh, man. So, yeah, there's a lot. And so those were, for me, the big moments, and got to throw a couple of my favorite quips, because he's got some great quips. And every episode, he has at least one line you're like, that's a great line. But so we don't have enough time to do every single one of those lines. But man, this Chandler is the comedic relief done right. And
yes,
it's funny because it's like in the universe, his jokes are kind like, they think his jokes are bad, but it's kind of like dad jokes, right? Where it's like people act like they don't like dad jokes, but there's still this certain appeal to them that people really like dad jokes. And maybe it's like just the idea of like, oh, I like to feel better than the jokes, but it's not like he tells bad jokes in this show. His jokes are legitimately funny. And so it's funny to see all these characters act like, oh, he just has these dumb jokes or whatever. Like his knock knock, when like he's getting ready to go into the apartment, and he's like, I'm funny. What, right? I'm sorry. And he's like talking to the door. He's like, what do you know? You're a door. You only think knock knock jokes are funny. And then he laughs to himself. It's like, save it for inside.
Well, that's when Monica says someone at work was funny, and he's like obsessed with it. And like, oh no, I'm the funny one.
Yes, but he is legitimately funny, and you can just tell that it's just a natural extension of who he is. He's a fine actor, but I feel like Chandler is a version of Matthew Perry. It's hard to separate the actor from the character, especially as you see what he does in interviews and behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, Matthew Perry is the whole reason that Bruce Willis guest starred on Friends.
Yeah. And he did it, for free? Because it was just a bet.
Yeah, well, it was a bet when they were making the whole 9 yards. Yep. Matthew Perry said, this movie will be a hit, and if it is, you have to come on. But it was technically they paid him, because legally you can't just not pay an actor.
Oh, sure.
But whatever he made from Friends, he donated to charity is what it was. So he
That's right.
More or less was on Friends for free for those couple episodes.
It's fun when actors show up in shows just for their friends. Like, okay, John Candy's on Home Alone. All of his filming happened over the course of 22 hours consecutively. They're like, we've got you for this much time. We're going to use every second of that as much as we can. And he actually got paid like the standard rate. So John Candy got paid less for Home Alone than the pizza delivery guy did. And like, who's the bigger actor there? All right, come on.
Yeah. Oh, you mean John Johnson isn't the greatest actor in the world? I don't know.
John Candy's great, but there's no John Johnson.
So, do you know about the crazy conspiracy theory that Elvis is in Home Alone?
No, I didn't know that. I know the crazy conspiracy theory that Kevin McAllister grows up to be Jigsaw from the Saw movies.
I've heard that one. But no, I mean, this is just ridiculous. But in that scene where Kevin's mom is at the counter, and just before John Candy is overhearing what's happening before he steps in, there's a man that's standing behind them, just like an extra, and it's just like his facial features look similar to Elvis, and he's like wearing, he has a beard on, and some people are like, oh my gosh, that's Elvis. He secretly didn't die, and he grew a beard, and he's in an extra in Home Alone, and like. It's just like so much of a stretch. And like, I was watching Home Alone just this past week, and that scene came in, and I saw that guy. I'm like, I mean, I would never have put Elvis together unless I already didn't know that conspiracy theory. Like, it's just the guy who kind of looks like Elvis a little bit.
Man, I remember as a kid all these different conspiracy theories for all these classic movies. We have different conspiracy theories now, but like for movies, there used to be a ton. Like the Ghost Boy in Three Men and a Little Baby, or
Yep.
the Munchkin who hung himself in the
Yep.
background
Okay,
of
so,
Wizard of Oz,
yeah.
or like any of the Disney animated like sneaking in. Although with the Rescuers Down Under, they did sneak in a couple frames of actual nudity in Rescuers Down
Yes.
Under. But
Yeah.
like the different stuff of in Lion King and Little Mermaid and all that sort of stuff,
Yeah, and Aladdin.
and
They all have.
Aladdin.
They all have stuff like that.
Yeah. So now I don't feel like I hear that. I hear fan theories from movies now versus conspiracy theories from movies. But yeah, 20 years ago, it used to be like, yeah, all these different urban legends.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and most of them are just crap. Yeah.
yeah. Most urban legends are. That's true. All right. Like the story about the guy who would willingly ask people to kick him in the junk just so that he could get stronger and be able to take it eventually.
Yep.
Yep, that never happened. That was completely urban legend. There's no basis for. So last week's trivia. All right, guys. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, last week was a lot of fun. We had 2 guest stars. Our first time with a guest star named Alex, and our 7th time or 6th time with Paul.
8th time.
8th, one of those. At this point, I just stopped counting and I let Brian do it for me. So we got to have them on. That was a lot of fun. That was a great episode. Check it out. But we asked about, because one of the top shows from the 2000s was Lost. And so originally, what character was cast as Jack Shepherd? And that was Matthew Fox. Or not, well, Matthew Fox ended up playing him. Sorry. That was Michael Keaton was originally cast as Jack Shepherd. Now, here's the idea is that we also know that Jack Shepherd, you probably heard this, he was supposed to die in the first episode. There's this whole thing about like, we're going to pull the rug out from under the audience and kill the protagonist right away. And the whole thing is actually going to focus more on Kate than on Jack. And the producers are like, that's a really risky move. I don't think we should do that. I don't think he can pull it off. And they pretty much forced him to change the script around and to have Jack Shepherd be a regular. And at that point, Michael Keaton was like, I don't know if I have the time to commit to movies or to TV. So he had to bow out because he thought it was just going to be a one-off and he could do that. And so instead of Michael Keaton, we got the unknown actor at the time, Matthew Fox, or relatively unknown, who best decision for that actor, I think.
Yeah.
And so
definitely. Yeah.
I think it worked out really well. I thought Matthew Fox did really well in that role, even if I don't think Jack Shepherd's a great character.
So this week for trivia, Matthew Perry, in real life, he is the son of an actor. His dad, John Bennett Perry, was actually a guest star on an episode of Friends. So who did Matthew Perry's real life dad play on Friends?
Ross Geller.
Yep.
I knew it.
Yep.
Man, though it was me, your father, the whole time. That's the extended version. All right. Well, hey, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you guys really enjoy this. I hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving. We're right at the cusp of it. So next week we are going to have our Thanksgiving episode, but I think that's, if I'm doing my math right, I think that's going to come after the Thanksgiving holiday. So have a safe one. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your time. If you don't have family that you spend time with for Thanksgiving, I'm sorry. I hope that you have good people around you, that it can be a support system that you hang out with. But either way, I hope you eat a lot of food and that it's good food and it's great. And also, rest in peace, Matthew Perry. Thank you for making us laugh. We really appreciated all the joy that you brought us. So hopefully you're looking down on us and enjoying this episode. So until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.